So I wanted to talk about one of the most common natural community types here in Central Florida, particularly in the urban, suburban landscape, and also on a lot of our public lands, and that is successional hardwoods, or successional hardwood forest. The reason it's called successional hardwood forest is because effectively natural succession, which in this case is, succession to hardwoods, was driven by anthropogenic fire exclusion. So people excluding fire, selected for hardwoods that have grown up in the landscape. So some of these distinguishing features of successional hardwoods, the common variants of successional hardwoods that you'll see in Florida is overwhelming, almost exclusively going to be laurel oak and live oak. Drier sites, a lot of times you'll have more of the laurel oak, more music sites, maybe a little more live oak. Sometimes it's a good mix. And then obviously you'll have some other minor components, like you see here. You have like a lot of small sable palms and stuff, and sometimes palmettos in the understory, stuff like that. But also another thing that you'll notice is that in most successional hardwoods, the trees are almost uniform in size and like age class. And again, that has to do with, say this particular site, this is Tampa Bypass Canal Park here in Tampa. So this site was historically Mesic flatwoods along the, above the floodplain of the old 6 Mile Creek. And after the bypass canal was built and this area was developed, this was, I think in the aerial images in the 1960s, this area where I'm currently standing was completely bare pasture. So now it's covered with all these, say 12 to 24 inch live oaks, almost entirely, probably 80% of the trees are live oak, southern live oak. And then the other 20% is laurel oaks, and there's some cabbage palms in there. So the area has succeeded from pasture to live oaks and laurel oaks. It's all hardwoods, 100% hardwoods in here. So there's no fire, and trees are uniform age because they all started establishing at about the same time, when this area was pasture and it stopped being burned and was developed and closed with development. The oaks recruited, and now in 2021, this is what we have. So successional hardwoods are not technically a natural community. According to the Florida Natural Areas Inventory, or FNAI, they're not a natural community because, again, they arise as a result of fire suppression by people. So, however, that's not to say that successional hardwoods don't have a lot of habitat value, because they do. Particularly in this area, there's no upland forest of this magnitude within miles of this location. There's a lot of mast in here for squirrels and a lot of habitat for birds in here. So you'll see that there's not much diversity here. But if this piece of property was on your land, for example, something like this, or even in public lands, there's so much potential in a piece of, successional hardwoods like this. In the understory, there's a lot. I can think of so many things that could be done in a landscape like this with the mature canopy that's overhead and the, decades of soil development that's already going on here in a more or less undisturbed state. So, again, successional hardwoods are hardwood forests that have occurred as a result of human-created fire suppression here in Florida. And they're dominated by oaks almost exclusively, and they're quite beautiful. And again, there isn't a ton of difference between this and what you would call a music hammock, except for its species composition is skewed towards oak, and its position in the landscape doesn't occupy a naturally fire suppressed area, which would otherwise result in hammock. So, which is why, again, you don't have the common species. Like if this were a naturally occurring music hammock, you would have laurel oaks and live oaks for sure, but you would have a lot more cabbage palms. You would have a significant amount of southern magnolia, and as well as pignut hickory and sweet gums would be present. So because this is a drier site and was pasture at one time, and there's no seed source for those other plants for the most part, the oaks just take over. So you get this selection for laurel oak and live oak that's overwhelming. So again, successional hardwood forest, it's actually one of my favorite types of communities, because it's I don't know, it just is inspiring to me to think about what all you could do with something like this. And it's unfortunate because most of these type of habitats get leveled and turned into subdivisions and strip malls, et cetera, here in Florida, because they're just upland forest that's been disturbed according to most, flux codes and stuff like that are used to describe land covers. So if you have something like this in your neighborhood or on your property, there's just tremendous potential in most successional hardwoods. And another thing too is that your successional hardwoods, these type of forests are actually ideal for urban landscapes or around on homesteads and around people, because to get this to be, hammocks in general, they don't need fire. So to maintain a hammock in its, high quality state doesn't require fire. All that requires is you to remove the invasives and introduce more plant species diversity. And you could start to develop something that's really high quality, whereas a small piece of, and this is probably like a 3.5 acre little piece of woods right here. You can't, to maintain a 3.5 acre area of music flatwoods is actually really hard and expensive. But these type of habitats can coexist with people very well because they don't require the fire management. So again, successional hardwood forest. Check it out.